I'd like to call to order the Reidsville City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. First thing on the agenda is invocation by Pastor Christi of Woodmont United Methodist Church, 1926 Richardson Drive, Reidsville.
Thank you for the invitation and the honor. Let us pray. Gracious and Heavenly Father, we pray upon this meeting tonight. Lord, let our leaders have wise discernment, especially when it comes to the financial budget side. Lord, help them know what is best for our city, and we thank you for their service. Lord, we are so grateful for the staff of our city, the hard work they put in, the service to this city and you that they do every day. And Lord, we thank you for the great gift of Reidsville, all of our community. And Lord, help us to think wisely and do the best things for this city. And Lord, we will do all things to glorify you. And Lord, we just give you thanks for this day, the gift of life and the gift of your Son. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. We have two items. We have a motion.
Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing. Consideration of a conditional zoning request for a property located on Ashcroft Drive, Rockingham County Parcel 179807, to assign a City of Reidsville zoning designation of Conditional Zoning Residential 12, CZR-12. The applicant is Lomonaco Properties, LLC, and the owner of the property is Ashcroft Development, LLC. Docket number CZ 2025-03, Enclosure 1, Jason Hardin.
Thank you, Mayor and council members and city manager. Good evening. Lomonaco Properties, LLC is petitioning with written consent of the owner to rezone a property located off Ashcroft Drive. This is Rockingham County Tax Parcel number 179807 to Conditional Zoning Residential 12 or CZR 12. One item that came up in our review of this is that there are two other separate lots with that same parcel number. If you type it in the county's tax map, those other two lots are going to come up. Just when they subdivided it, the tax office did not do a new parcel number for those other two, but this is just specifically for this tract of land that you all have the plan for, so not those other two lots. Just wanted to note that. The owner of the property is Ashcroft Development, LLC. The parcel encompasses an area of 23.273 acres, which deviates again from the 37.49 that's shown on the tax record. The land is currently zoned R12 and it's undeveloped. The zoning assessment to the north is light industrial or I-1 and highway business along end of Richardson Drive. Then to the east, it's highway business fronting Freeway Drive. That's Ashcroft Commons. To the south, the zoning is R12. That was the original phases of the Ashcroft Development. They're zoned R12 as well. To the west, it's the county zoning of residential agricultural. City water service is available to the site, and water and sewer service are available approximately 200 feet to the east within the right-of-way of Freeway Drive, and 150 feet to the south within the right-of-way of Ashcroft Drive, and at the end of Ashland Drive. So there is infrastructure, utility service available. There's no streams on site. However, the property is located in both the Jordan Lake watershed and the Troublesome Creek watershed. There's no streams on site, as I said, that would require any kind of buffer or anything. As we know from the Gibbs Lake Road conditional zoning that you all did a couple months ago, a cluster development in Troublesome Creek watershed is allowed by right. That does not require council approval, so that removes the minimum lot size. So in R12, our minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet for single-family detached dwellings. So the cluster development provision that's in the ordinance removes that minimum lot size requirement. So that's not a provision of the conditional zoning, that's just allowed by right. And the intent behind that is to lessen the impact on the environment, to leave more green space, leave more open space, so that you're preserving that, open space and less impervious surface that takes up, the natural environment. So that's the reasoning behind that. That comes down from the state. That's not locally implemented. The applicant did engage the surrounding property owners. There was a neighborhood meeting conducted on May the 8th, 2025. There's a copy of the letter that was mailed to the surrounding owners that should be in your agenda packets provided. The floodplain insurance rate map does not show any floodplains on site. No floodplains on site. As we know, a conditional zoning request amends the zoning map with site-specific conditions that are incorporated into the amendment, which allows the owner or the developer to place voluntary conditions on the land with the intent of restricting allowable uses within the district. So you're reducing those, the general uses, you're reducing the general uses to specific uses. So you're restricting the land use voluntarily. The owner has to consent to that. So like I said, the owner and the applicant get to choose which of the allowable uses within the zoning district, which is in this case R12, they would like to impose onto the land. The owner and the applicant have requested to limit the allowable land uses to single-family detached dwellings, single-family attached dwellings, which as we know from last month are townhomes, and then two-family dwellings or duplexes. So that's on one lot where it's not subdivided like a single-family attached dwelling. So it's, as we noted, these are all by right uses in R12. Also in R12 is multifamily, so they're excluding multifamily through the conditional zoning. They're restricting it only to single-family detached, single-family attached, and two-family dwellings, which are all by right uses. So multifamily and everything would not be permitted on the site, okay? Although it is allowed by right currently right now. So the following development conditions are requested in the application. There's a provision of a 20-foot buffer around the, I wish we could have the, Steve, can we get the site plan pulled up? I'll pull up the site plan so everyone can see it.
Be a good idea.
One second. Yeah, click on it. Okay. That's fine. I just want one page out of it. The presentation. I'm just going to use the site plan out of there. Let's get to that one. So that's your overall conditional zoning concept plan. So the areas where there's green border, that's a natural buffer, or it will be fenced or landscaped. The applicant's voluntarily willing to restrict that area to be that buffer to ease with the transition into the site, because it is a little bit higher density. The first phases of Ashcroft are a little bit lower density, and that was purely because the builder or whoever developed that did that by their own will, because the watershed regulations weren't in effect at the time. I think it was the early 90s when Ashcroft was developed. So they may have not been allowed to do a cluster development at the time. But the watershed ordinance went into effect around 96 in Troublesome Creek. So I think Ashcroft was built around 92. So it's likely that these houses were constructed prior to that watershed ordinance going into effect. However, this of course falls under our current ordinance, which does allow for the cluster development under the watershed. The total density is limited to no more than 200 units. Your concept plan has 184 units that are noted and identified on here. However, the applicant is asking for up to 200 units be allowed, which if you all approved it and the applicant wanted to make a change, they would not be allowed to exceed 200 units. That would be the maximum. If they wanted to go above that, they got to come back, planning board, council, the whole 9 yards. So I know that Drew, our city planner, provided you this nice sheet which shows the current density calculations what's allowed now and what would be allowed under the conditional zoning. So I can just kind of briefly walk through this. So the site was issued a special intensity allocation, which Troublesome Creek watershed has a limit of impervious surface or built upon area of 24%. So that means you have 100 acres, only 24% of that can be developed. The rest of it has to be, natural area, no impervious surface. So the watershed ordinance, again from DEQ that we adopt, allows for the local government to administratively approve a special intensity allocation. That's something where they request it from us, and we've done it first come, first serve to be fair to everybody. So they've requested the 1070 so they can develop up to 70% of the site to 70% built upon area. Does that make sense? So they can, instead of 24, they can go up to 70. That's just by right. That's again not a part of the conditional zoning. That's only included with the 1070 provision. So there is a breakdown here, excuse me, of the amount of units that they can construct with the 24% and the 70%. So you can see there with the 70%, they do get a unit increase just by right. So it's pretty self-explanatory that they'll be limited to 70% built upon area. That's total. So that's single family detached, that's single family attached, everything's limited to 70%. Okay. So that's the long and short of that, really. And again, that's allowed by right. The only things I'm getting to, the conditions that they're asking for a deviation on, is from the setback, and I'll get to that in just a second. They are requesting to provide a pedestrian crosswalk across E.D. Wilkins Way to Ashcroft Commons to assist with that walkability, to help people walk to our local businesses, to be able to safely cross the street since there will be increased traffic, due to having more units along E.V. Wilkins. That's subject to DOT approval because E.V. Wilkins Way is NCDOT right-of-way. We have no jurisdiction to require any kind of improvements to E.V. Wilkins. That's all DOT. The public road standard shall be shown on as shown on the concept plan, typical cross section. So you can see, probably in your packets better than on the screens, in the left corner there's their cross section that shows the street, the curb to curb, and your total right-of-way width. Where all your utilities go, your sidewalks go, that's your public right-of-way, where all those public amenities go. So the development will proceed with that, and that has been reviewed by Public Works for compliance. The lot dimensional standards shall be as shown on the concept plan. This is where the deviation comes into play. With 20-foot front yard setbacks, 20-foot rear yard setbacks, and 5-foot side yard setbacks. So the 5-foot side yard is less than our required. So the watershed cluster development does not get you out of the setback requirements. They still have to meet setbacks. However, from my understanding, and the applicant can talk about their justification for asking for it, they can ask to reduce that setback through conditional zoning that's allowed through the general statute. Even though it's our local setback requirement, they can ask to deviate. That was the same thing that was requested with Gibbs Lake Road, if you recall. So that side yard setback deviation is their main request in the conditional zoning that kind of triggered that was the reduction. Then finally, condition number 6. The proposed project may include single-family detached townhouses and 2-family dwelling duplex lots. The dwelling unit type and placement shown on the concept plan is illustrative only. The area of the subject property that adjoins the single-family detached lots fronting Ashland Drive, illustratively shown as lots 11 through 39 and 88 through 93, shall be single-family detached lots. All other lots outside of this area may be single-family detached townhouses, 2-family duplexes. That will be determined during the subdivision review process. So what that means is that the area that's adjacent to the buffer that backs up to Ashland Drive, and then those two at the bottom right corner that backs up to the ones that front Ashcroft, will be single-family detached. That's a condition that they're requesting. So any other lots outside of those could be changed to single-family detached, attached, but again, they're still limited to the density in the built-upon area, so that's still in play. So they would still have to meet that requirement even if they started changing things around outside of that, okay? And it can only be one of those 3 allowed use types. So that's what you're getting out of it. So they're asking for the deviation. They voluntarily requested to provide these other provisions, which you would not get through a general zoning requirement. If they built on it today, there would be no buffer. There would be no crosswalk. There would be no requirement for single-family detached to back up to these existing single-family homes. They could be townhomes or apartments under the general zoning now, just so you're aware. The proposed concept plan, as I said, limits construction to 200 dwelling units, 150 of which are single-family detached, or single-family attached, 34 single-family detached, with the development condition requested that the density again not exceed 200 units. Per Article 5, Section 1 of the zoning ordinance, any major change that alters the density of the development, decreases the use of compatible design features, decreases pedestrian features, or changes the uses approved for the property must again come before the planning board and the city council. Again, that's a major change, so that's not something that staff would be able to approve. You all would be hearing about it if any of those kinds of changes were proposed. Minor changes which do not arise to a major change may be approved administratively by the planning director. Approval of the concept plan, as we know, with the conditional zoning does not issue approval for construction. This is only to attach with the zoning. They still have to go through preliminary subdivision plat review with the technical review committee and then have a final plat. So this is no approvals for construction are being issued today, or being considered today. Staff has been made aware of some traffic concerns regarding Ashland Drive and the intersection of E.V. Wilkins and Ashcroft Drive. I investigated this myself, and the curb to curb on Ashland is 34 feet wide. It's a wide street. It was built, I think these were built around 92. Our current land development specifications were drafted in 1989 and adopted. So this was built under our current standard. So this would be very similar to being, what would be constructed now, with the exception of a sidewalk being provided. That went into effect later. So as far as the width of the street, it's a very wide street. They didn't even, asphalt the end of the street at Ashland right there. They obviously planned to build this as a future phase. So as staff, we don't see a traffic concern from a planner perspective, but that's something that's more of a construction plan type review. It's not really something we get too far into with rezoning and stuff. That's more of a construction plan and looking to make any kind of modifications for construction type thing that we don't really get into here. But we did consider it because the public is concerned. E.V. Wilkins, as I said, didn't go too far into that because that's DOT. That's outside of our jurisdiction. So didn't go too far into that. I know there's concerns about just having one exit kind of coming out of the development onto Freeway Drive. The only thing as far as staff that we can give you with that is, the lot's buildable as it is. Someone could come in and get development approvals by right and build on it and not have to come before council, and you would still see that increased traffic. That is a situation, that's just kind of the reality of, the way this was designed years ago when they started to build this development. That's the best guidance and assistance of staff that I can provide council. Excuse me. The proposed conditional rezoning aligns with goal number 3 of the Reidsville Land Development Plan to expand housing. This includes expanding the housing stock and providing a variety of housing options that are attractive and affordable to people of all income levels. The property is located in Growth Management Area 3, Suburban, which surrounds the city center, primarily encompassing the areas to the south, southwest, north, northwest, and west of the city. Growth Management Area 3 is predominantly characterized by a mix of residential and commercial development with ample vacant land available for development. According to the Land Development Plan, Growth Management Area 3 prioritizes the expansion of residential development and provides an existing transportation network capable of accommodating growth. Additionally, GMA 3 residential development is in close proximity to commercial, office, and industrial employment, as well as retail services. Staff finds that the proposed conditional rezoning is consistent with the Reidsville Land Development Plan, reasonable, and in the public interest based on the aforementioned information that I provided to you in this report, and the attached statements of reasonableness and consistency in your packets. Planning staff recommends that the proposed conditional rezoning application be approved, and the planning board recommended the proposed conditional rezoning be approved with a vote of 4-1. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions of Jason?
Do you have the map of the aerial view and not this one?
I think there is one in this presentation.
The one in our packet, I can't, it's too small for me to make out some things, and I think the aerial.
Or there's one with the, there we go. Full transparency, this is the applicant's presentation.
Yeah, do you have the one with?
We don't have that one in here now. That's a good one right there.
What about this map? Do you have this map?
Right behind you. Yeah, it's up there.
It's not highlighted like this one, so it's a little more difficult.
So where the star is, that's the Ashcroft, that's the lot that's proposed where the star is.
Right.
I got a couple questions. One, you said that the planner presented this, which we requested last week. I'd like for her to come up here and explain this to the people as well, and what the intended purpose of when I requested this document as well, if she doesn't mind. And I think it's difficult for a lot of the people here to probably understand everything that he has said, and also understand where council stands in terms of what the different zonings are based off of state law, and what these zonings are, and really what authority we have, and what the consequences of if we were to vote against or for this document. These laws, these zoning laws that I asked for last week will break down these zonings so people understand the R12 and, all the different Rs, 10s, 8s, and whatever, and understand what the limitations are for us, or maybe even consequences, please.
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity to clarify any questions you have about the density calculations. What this sheet provided, first and foremost.
Do we have this by chance?
We don't have this in digital format, but I can share this with anyone from the public who would like a copy of this after the fact. So at the top is the site information, some information about the current zoning, the proposed zoning, the unit count, which is 184, up to 200. The approximate acreage, I rounded that to 23 when I did these calculations. You have the watershed there, which is Troublesome Creek, and then you have the requested lot size, which was 5,000. I included that and not necessarily the information on the setbacks because we used the lot size to do the calculation for density. So the first section there that you have is a density calculation based on the current zoning, which is R12. Those are 12,000 square foot lots under the Troublesome Creek watershed allocation of a 24% built upon area. That's by right. So that first number.
So can we explain to these people that by right means regardless of what happens here tonight, that these guys need no approval from us, they can start building?
Yes, so this particular calculation is what they could have done had they never even asked for a special intensity, had they never come before you for a rezoning. They could have submitted a site plan with density up to 24% built upon area for the townhomes and multifamily, or up to 2 units an acre for single family, without ever asking staff for anything additional or any deviation.
And in terms of that versus what changes they're asking, what is the number difference in units? How many additional units are we allowing them? We provide this. And then also, let's say if we as council struck down this rezoning, what are they allowed to build there as it sits so that it is very clear to the citizens of Reidsville?
Certainly.
What's allowed to go there?
Yes, sir. So the single family under what's existing, 24%, had we not given a special intensity allocation, which as Jason mentioned, staff did. So they are approved up to 70% built upon. So this is just for reference. They've already been approved that. The 24%, had they never come before us to ask for anything, you're looking at about 46 single family units. You're looking at 57.96, so about 58 units of multifamily or townhome. And if they did the outdoor space allocation for the bonus 1.2 units an acre, they could have gotten 66 units.
So we would be looking at roughly about 150 units.
Well, that's individual.
Yes, individual, but yes.
Individual, so they could do 46 units or 58 townhomes, multifamily, or 66 with the bonus. It's an or, it's not together.
Okay.
Now, based on what they're requesting tonight, so at 5,000 square foot a lot, the calculation changes a little bit. We checked with DEQ whether or not we can include single family in the 70% impervious calculation, and the direction that we were given was that yes, you can do that. So that's what we've done for this site. Considering that, you have 23 acres at 70% built upon, you're at 16.1 acres that can be developed. Acre to square footage conversion there, you end up with about 701,316 square feet that can be developed. You divide that by the 5,000 square foot lot size that they're requesting, and you end up with 140 single family units. Now, if you look at townhomes or multifamily, by right at 70%, they could do 169.5 units, or with that bonus, 1.5 units per acre, they could have done 193.2. And that's townhomes, or apartments, or condos.
Yes, and that's if we don't rezone.
That's regardless.
I want to make that clear because I think it's important that everyone understands here that whatever decision may be made is in the best interest, of these people. And I'm not sure that the citizens here understand what the rights are, and I'm saying this because I received multiple phone calls, and basically, in a nutshell, if we didn't change anything, this developer didn't want to build what he's building here, he could purchase this piece of property, and he could build Lawndale Drive in your backyard, correct?
By right, townhomes, apartments are allowed.
Yes, so, if this land is developed by anyone, then it can be apartments, or we can rezone and you can get 184 homes, townhomes mixed use that's proposed here now.
34 single family and 150 townhomes.
Roughly. So I want to make sure that everybody here is clear on what the options are. We allow them to build this, or if I make a motion, whoever makes a motion and it's the consensus of council to rezone this is what you get. Or if we strike this rezoning down, and the developer backs up and says, okay, well, now I'm going to build apartments here. You can have apartment complex, and he don't have to ask city for nothing, and you can have it for Lawndale. You can have Lawndale Drive, you know. Do what now? Yeah, Lawndale Drive's for rent. Yeah, those are something that somebody buys, you know. Secondly, I want to help make some clarity here in terms of these zonings. What's allowed in these zonings are not set by council. This is set by state, correct?
No, so this is from the zoning ordinance, and this is what we've adopted into the ordinance, whether that's via text amendment or at original adoption.
Correct, but these zonings, your different R12s, R10s are set up where, you know, allows whatever to come in there, which is part of the state, correct? Can anybody just take an R12 and do what they want to do in it? Who sets that rule?
The city sets that.
Every city sets that rule.
Our ordinance sets that, and so what we have in our ordinance, our staff and our council, previous or current, has adopted that into the ordinance, same as Greensboro does in Greensboro. Winston-Salem does in Winston-Salem.
So there's no limitations whatsoever set in these, or no standards set of these by the state?
Not by the state. There are allowed uses that have been incorporated based on staff or council.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I did, and I was hoping we had this other map up here, because I think this would probably help some folks that live out that way kind of get an understanding. This is going to be a little tough from the one I'm looking at with the yellow border on our agenda, because it looks a little bit different than this. So, in looking at this, just so I can get it out there and so people understand, when you come in on Ashcroft and you make that curve, and you have some wooded area, and then you have I guess a fairly recent house that's built there on the right. So from what I'm looking at here in this border, you're going to have these 34 homes that's going to go along Ashcroft and then behind the other homes on Ashland.
So they're abutting on the westernmost border of that parcel. So this is, northwest, southeast. It is oriented correctly. So on that left-hand side, the westernmost side is where you're going to have those single-family homes.
And then your townhomes or duplex or whatever will be more or less facing the Ed Wilkins way towards the strip mall will be on that side of the lot.
Yep, the rest of the development will be the townhomes.
So you got a buffer of single-family homes, and then on the east side, closest to Ed Wilkins way, is where your townhomes will be situated.
Everything from that western side over.
Okay.
On this particular map right here, it appears that there's coming up Ed Wilkins Way, that's now going to also cut out on Freeway Drive as well. Is that the proposal?
No, so what that is, that's just a paper road. It's a platted right-of-way that's not existing. And it's just depicted there because there's no aerial imagery.
Gotcha.
So there will not be a connection to freeway there.
But there is a connection into the development off of the Ed Wilkins Way.
Correct.
Into the development. Plus you have just before Ashland will be a new entryway into this subdivision, correct?
No, that little stub out there will not be the only connections. They're off of Ashland and Wilkins Way.
Yeah, this stub out and Wilkins Way are the way in, correct?
No, that little stub out that you're pointing to will not be developed.
I got you. So how are we entering into this subdivision? That's a lot of questions people
You have
have.
a
Site plan.
site plan, yeah. There it is.
If you look back at the concept plan, you can see that the driveway comes out onto E.V. Wilkins.
So do you have a cursor you can put on that to highlight that?
You're looking at the right top corner.
Is there a laser on this thing?
I don't
Oh, there
think
sure
so.
is.
It's not going to show up on the TV.
Okay, so E.V. Wilkins is going to extend up and then go to the left in the top right there.
It's right here.
Okay.
One entrance on E.V. Wilkins and one on Ashland.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
So my understanding is that with what we're being presented tonight is really more restrictive than what they possibly could do on their own. We have more control over that than if they just went out there and did it on their own.
They're providing conditions, the buffer, the connection to E.V. Wilkins, the guarantee, the homes that back up to Ashland will be single-family.
So what does that guarantee mean to us
But it's
and
not
to our
apartments.
citizens?
Yes.
They're not including apartments, so there won't be any apartments here, which would be allowed by right. So they're including that. They're including the buffer to protect, along the boundary, those existing properties on Ashcroft and Ashland, and then they're insuring the single family as well.
But they will be limited to the number of units that you gave us on this sheet of paper.
Up to 200 as presented. Yep, up to 200.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Now, let me ask you this, because I know there's only one way in, one way out. Was that ever considered either by our planning or DOT or getting with DOT?
Isn't it two
To
ways
have
in
a-
and out?
No.
There's two entrances into the development, but there's only the one entrance that I believe you're referencing at the stoplight
Right.
on Freeway.
Okay.
That's the only way to get in, that's the only way to get out. And that was my concern. Did we have any discussion, or did we even look at that, or developers look at it as a possible another entrance and exit to that, instead of having that to be congested, which I think may happen?
I mean, I know we never discussed like the requirements of a TIA for this site. There has been some discussion in the community, but that's not something staff's ever discussed with them.
With this right-of-way you're talking about that's on here where I thought was showing a design to come out crossing over on the Freeway Drive, is that a possibility for that? Say if the developer said, okay, we'll cut this road in for the people. Is that, are they eligible to do that? Or is that be something they'd have to go through DOT for?
Yeah, so they would have to contact DOT since Ed Wilkins Way is DOT and Freeway Drive is DOT.
Gotcha.
Staff hasn't, explored that possibility.
Gotcha. But if they did a traffic impact study, then if a second entrance off of Freeway Drive would have been required, that should have came up with DOT in their traffic impact study? Do we know?
It's possible. That would be with DOT, whatever their requirements would be.
Yeah, okay.
As I said, traffic studies are things we get more into with construction plan review, not really with rezonings and things.
Yes.
So that would be considered when we go through preliminary subdivision plat.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:37. Anyone who'd like to speak for?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
We get your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Hodier, and address is 804 Green Valley Road, Suite 200 in Greensboro. And I'm here tonight as the attorney representing the applicant, Lomonaco Properties, with the consent of the property owner, Ashcroft Development. I have with me here tonight the principals of Lomonaco, Laurie Ford and John Ford, and also Aiden Stolzfutz. He's our civil engineer and design professional who's helped us with the creation of the documents that are before you. So to the extent we need them as a resource, they're here. Thank you for your thoughtful preparation for tonight. Obviously, y'all have been asking some good questions and preparing for this, and thank you to Mr. Hardin and Drew, who I haven't met, for all that help. I feel like we're in a good position to go from there. So just to summarize the request, a few of these things you heard from Mr. Hardin, but I want to lift up. The subject property is 23.273 acres. It's that larger part of the tax parcel that we've been looking at. Current zoning is R12. You've talked a lot about that. Just by the math alone, not applying your other matrix of development standards that Drew went into, but just by the math, 240 homes. That's just multiplying 24 acres times 10 units per acre. So just to kind of set a baseline, oranges to oranges, if you will. No additional commitments or clarity or additional restrictions and curating of the request, which is really what we're here to do tonight. We're here to specify and customize that R12 zoning. The proposed zoning before you is R12 conditional. It's a companion district to R12. So it's not really about changing the universe of land uses. It's about narrowing it in, tailoring it, and customizing it to what fits and what's most appropriate in this location. It adds additional commitments as to building form. You've heard a lot about the fact we're getting rid of the form option of multifamily that would have otherwise been allowed. Building commitments as to maximum number of units. commitments about adding to your walkability multimodal system, commitments about adding landscape buffers that otherwise wouldn't be required. And then just as importantly, what this request is not, because this is a big sequence we're all hearing about, it's not any change to that previously approved special intensity allocation permit that you heard about. So Councilperson Martin had some history teed up on that, so that's already done. It exists. So that's already in place. This doesn't touch that. It's not a final site plan or construction drawings. So zoning just sets the table. It's permission to try. So once we get zoning, then we have to go back and make sure we're not exceeding 70%. We have to make sure we're getting the NCDOT approval for how the road and traffic is going to work. We have to make sure we're meeting the drainage requirements, that the dimensions all work out. So as you apply more of that, things get further and further more specific. So zoning is just the first step that allows us to pursue that additional exploration. Driveway permits, for example. So now that we've talked about the request, I just want to quickly visit the posture, the status of this case as it comes to you tonight. It does have staff recommendation for approval, as you've heard from Mr. Hardin, and planning board recommendation of approval of 4-1, as you also heard in your staff report. So that's how it arrives before you here tonight. This is the subject property, and this is important. I know you all know where this is. You're obviously very familiar with it, but if we zoom out and kind of look at it from the 50,000 feet, if you will, this is located at the interchange of two major travel corridors here in Reidsville, Highway 158 and Business 29. You can see it there in that proximity. It bridges, it's not only in the shadow of those two major corridors, but it bridges existing land uses that line those commercial corridors. You've got a lot of highway business. You heard about some of this in the presentations before me. You've got highway business lining and light industrial uses there along 158 and Highway 29. And then, of course, you've got the Ashcroft subdivision that you heard about as you move to the west. So you've got this intervening area. You see it there on the aerial. It's green and undeveloped right now. That is going to be the transition between those commercial and industrial corridors and this existing single-family subdivision. That transitional use needs to be a transition. It needs to step down. It needs to appropriately disperse that activity and that intensity from those major travel corridors back down to that single-family density. So we've got two ends of the spectrum here, and this is the missing puzzle piece that needs to bridge that gap. And we submit to you tonight that this curation of your R12, this customization and narrowing of it, presents to you that tailored transitional use that fits here. And the zoning pattern, you've looked at this. This is my map, not staff's map, but you can see the zoning pattern here. Your bright green is the R12 that you've been hearing about. The purple is that light industrial, and the red is your highway business intense commercial zoning. The red star indicates the subject property that we've been talking about. And this zoning quilt in your colors of your districts evidences that land use pattern that I just walked through. You see all that highway business intense commercial land use along Highway 29. You see the purple along Highway 158 right there at the interchange, and you see the bright green R12 that encompasses the existing Ashcroft development of those single-family homes. Again, this piece sitting right in the middle at R12. So the question before you is, what should that R12 look like? R12 has several different ways it could go, so this request is about tailoring that. So how do we create that transition? Again, it's still going to be R12, but what are the appropriate conditions and zoning sketch plan aspects to let you guys know that it's appropriate, reasonable, and consistent? We have a proposed use condition. This is what you've heard about to get rid of the multifamily. The only thing that's going to be allowed here, the commitment that would run with the land and be attached, a firm restriction that my client or anyone else who came to develop this property would have to abide by, is that it would be limited to single-family detached, townhomes, or two-family dwellings, duplexes, and that mirrors the terminology in your zoning ordinance. With associated residential community infrastructure and improvements, things like the mailbox kiosk, extra parking, roads, that sort of thing, so that those lots function. And then we've got 6 proposed development conditions. How does this lay out? So the total number of dwelling units would be limited to 200. That's a cap. And your point of comparison there, my oranges to oranges, is that we started at 240, just by the simple math. So we're taking that down to 200, and then from there, we have to make all the development standards work. So that's why our zoning sketch plan, which we'll look at in a moment, doesn't even get to 200. Because once you apply all the other requirements of your watershed ordinance and of your subdivision and zoning ordinances, zoning doesn't let you just remove those things. You still have to meet them. So this is a cap, an outside perimeter, if you will, from which to do the rest of the development standard planning. And this takes that cap down by 40 units. We've also made a commitment for that 20-foot wide natural landscape vegetation buffer that you saw. Again, this is all R12. So without this commitment, that would not be required. No buffers required where there's like to like. The pedestrian crossing to be provided across E.V. Wilkins Way or Ed Wilkins Way, subject to DOT approval because, of course, it's their road. But that's done to show an acknowledgement and an awareness of the circumstances. Wouldn't it be nice for folks who live here and within Ashcroft? Remember, there's sidewalks proposed here, so folks could walk all the way through on safe sidewalks across the pedestrian crossing and visit the Italian restaurant or the Mexican restaurant or the nail salon across the way in those red commercial uses that we saw on the map. We'll talk about this in a moment, but that's part of your comprehensive plan to provide walkability and multimodal transportation options. So that's why we wanted to offer a condition that furthered those goals. The public road standard is going to be as shown on the concept plan, which importantly, as Mr. Hardin mentioned, has been reviewed by your Public Works Department, so you all know and have the commitment that it meets your standards and that it meets the specifications for safety and usability that you guys as a city look for. The lot dimensional standards is really what brought us here today because we needed, when we introduce a single family use like we've talked about and like we're going to look more at, we need to be able to make efficient use of the land and lay that out in such a way that single family makes sense and that it doesn't lay out better as all townhomes, because when we looked at this site, we felt it was important to provide an adjoining single-family layer there that would back up to existing single-family. So in order to do that, we needed those lot dimension standards that are shown in your packet and that Mr. Hardin talked about. This is an important point, but for that need, this rezoning would not be required. So that's because we wanted to introduce that single-family land use as a firm commitment. That's what necessitated this rezoning. The proposed project may include single-family detached townhomes and 2 families. As you've heard, it can be laid out in any way, but for the fact that that layer that backs up and adjoins existing single-family has to be single-family. So that's an important restriction because otherwise anything could go anywhere, right? So we wanted to make sure that while the zoning concept plan is conceptual, it's subject to further engineering, but that single family row to create like-to-like will exist, regardless of how engineering might rearrange some of the townhome layout. So here's the zoning concept plan. This is a requirement of your conditional zoning district. It's to allow you all to visualize, allow the public to visualize how these conditions, because again, they would become law. They would attach to this dirt and run with the land. So how might they manifest? How might they show up in real life? So this is what the zoning concept plan does. And all of the conditions that I just went over, that Mr. Hardin has gone over, they're also on the face of this plan to create that reciprocity and mirrored commitment, so they're everywhere, so that they speak to each other. And then you see on the image here that it applies all of those 7 commitments. The landscape buffers are shown. The single-family lining of the existing single-family is shown. It's only 184 units, so that's under that 200-unit cap. So this is exemplifying or illustrating to you how these conditions can be applied and also meet the other requirements of your development ordinance, the 70% cap, the requirements for the lot dimensions, for enough parking, for a mail kiosk, for open space. All of those things have been at least preliminarily looked at so that we as a developer and you as a community know that we're not all up here wasting our time, that it is feasible and it can happen, and this would be a good and reasonable use of your conditional zoning requirements and standards. So another big part of your analysis, not just reasonableness, but also does this comport with your long-range planning? Is this getting us closer and furthering the objectives that we as a city have put in place? And to do that, we look at your Reidsville land development plan, your long-range comprehensive planning. We look at that holistically, and three big things jumped out at me that were important to you. If I'm looking at that plan, one was housing optionality. There was a lot of talk and language in there about wanting to increase housing stock, increase the variety of housing forms that are available, and to invest in existing neighborhoods and locations that are already thriving and used in your city. If you remember the map, this was the missing puzzle piece. So that tells us that it's almost infill. This is already a part of your city where people want to be and where they're locating and where they are using those travel corridors, where they're going to those businesses, and where they're making use of the utility infrastructure investments that you of a city has made, water and sewer. Also, we see that pedestrian access is important for you all. So again, we're looking at creating people to visit those businesses. So how do we safely make sure that people can get to those businesses? So that's why we wanted to add things that that speak to the built environment with that pedestrian crossover. And activity center planning. That's a planning concept, a basis, a framework for growth and land development that focuses people and intensity around certain activity nodes. Why is that a good planning concept? Because it limits sprawl and it takes advantage of your existing and your already made investments in infrastructure. And it serves people where they already are. So we're not asking you to leapfrog over a bunch of greenfield and open areas and make people travel further out to get home or to get to these businesses from their home. We're trying to place people where they already want to be so that they can walk to businesses, so that they can get on the travel corridors and go where they need to go, so that they can live close to where they work and play and already access your city. And so that you all can have housing and have residents live where you can already hook them up to the water and sewer that you've already built. That's creating a good return on that investment of those utility pieces, not asking you to extend them further out than they already are. We next look at your future land use plan. It divides the city up into categories and tells us what you're looking for in each of those categories. So the category here is Growth Management Area 3. That's looking for commercial, industrial, office, and employment type uses with predominantly residential. And it says, it even notes, potential conflict among incompatible land uses. So this case is a perfect anecdote, if you will, to that situation that your comprehensive plan has already noted. So because we've got these activity centers, because the GMA3 looks for these types of uses to be there, how do we make sure that that's compatible with the residential? How do we make sure that there's transition and appropriate stepping down and placement of between land use forms? So I've talked about how a development that is townhomes and then steps down to a smaller single-family product and then to the existing larger lots of Ashcroft, that plays into exactly this GMA3 language that we see here. And it, as I've already mentioned, it provides housing in a location where people already want to be, where your city's already invested in folks being. And of course, the activity center is the reason why there's people and investment in this location. Neighborhood outreach, you heard some of this from Mr. Hardin. My clients mailed a letter to about 60 property owners utilizing the city's same notification radius, because we want to make sure that anyone who got a city notice about this also could hear from us, so that they would have our contact information, could call us up and say, hey, what's going on here? Who are you? What is it you want to do? And invited everybody to a meeting that was held on May 8th at the Reidsville Recreation Center. So my clients had a chance to explain the project, go over their goals and their vision and the why of why they feel like this would be a good fit and why they'd like to be here. They talked about things like traffic questions that were raised. They had about 17 people attend and also fielded some calls and emails ahead of time. So there were traffic questions raised. Sounds like you guys are getting some of those as well. There was questions about where the access would be, Would this be an HOA community? What type of homes would be here? How will the construction work, sequencing, phasing, timing, and then, what kind of homes will this be? What type of homes can we expect? So we talked about all that, or they talked about all that at the meeting. This will be an HOA community. It'll be of a nice quality that can maintain the types of common areas you saw, that there will be one local centralized entity that if there's a dead tree in that 20-foot buffer we looked at, there's one phone call of who needs to remove it and replace it, that sort of thing. And then in terms of traffic, this was mentioned a little bit before I stood up here, but this of course zoning is a preliminary threshold. And then we move on to further review that would include NCDOT. And so what that means is that we have to go to NCDOT, we have to submit a trip generation memorandum similar to a TIA. It's what they call for in this scenario, where they say, hey, what's your trip generation and what are the impacts going to be? And then they tell us what improvements have to be done to accommodate that. So it's not a ask and wish list negotiation. It's very much a mandate. You put in your site plan. That's why it's not done until zoning and all of this, because they want to study what's actually going there. They don't want to study a pie in the sky. Well, maybe it's 240, maybe it's 200, maybe it's 180. They want to know the exact site plan that's been through Jason and Drew and Public Works and everyone, and they want to review that against their standards and then say, hey, okay, that trip generation warrants the following things. So we will do that pursuant to that process as we have to. We will follow the mandated requirements that come out of that process. You have to, or you don't get a driveway permit. So that's not up for debate by us or any developer. But I will tell you, as part of the due diligence and doing our homework, again, making sure what we're talking about is even feasible, that there won't be any surprises. My clients have been engaging with their traffic engineer. They've hired Davenport Engineering out of Winston-Salem, who work with this district office of DOT quite often, and they've been running preliminary trip generation reports. And to start that process, we ran an analysis of 240 townhomes. What is that trip generation versus 140 homes? Because that's really the delta. That's really the range and spectrum that we're talking about tonight. And of course, as you would imagine, the peak trips and the trip generated is less with the proposal of this rezoning, further restricting. However, it's pretty de minimis. So the relevant question of what would the traffic impacts and improvements required today be if it was built at the by right uses that you all discussed versus what would they be under this development, they get better. The trips are less. The trip generation is less, and we've already shared that and corroborated that with NCDOT. Now they won't say exactly, do you need a turn lane here? How long does that taper have to be? They're not going to say that until they see an exact site plan. But again, that's a requirement. It's not a step that gets to get skipped. So that is a baked-in part of your process, and the technical experts and the agency that looks out for the city and the state is who makes those decisions. I'll also just say anecdotally, we did hear at the meeting that there's some concerns about site visibility because of an off-site little triangular area where there's some overgrown vegetation and a monument sign that makes it difficult as you're exiting Ashcroft. And we've worked with the seller of this subject property who owns that little triangle to ensure that we can clean those up regardless of what NCDOT says about it. So just making sure that we can control and improve the things that are within our control. And because that's what's so valuable about neighborhood feedback. Those are the little things that you hear and you learn from folks who do this every day. So we wanted to take that back and address it, which we have. So I'm happy to answer any further questions, or John and Laurie are, about those discussions, and I'm sure we've got some neighbors here as well who can go into that. We've talked a little bit about this already, so I won't belabor this, but zoning is the first step. It sets the table. It's permission to try, and then we have to pursue many other approvals, and all of those have to be approved. They go through your rigorous review process, and they have to also be met before this project could continue. So things like utility, water, and sewer service, making sure we can connect appropriately to those utilities you have in the area. The driveway permits with NCDOT, I've just talked about that. site plan approval to make sure we're appropriately managing the stormwater, we're not exceeding 70%, that we're draining, our drainage calculations are correct. Construction drawing approval, that's what allows us to actually, submit for building permits and go vertical, and then eventually building permits and certificates of occupancy for the homes. So it's a long horizon, and you really can't start getting into those more micro approvals until you know what zoning framework you're working within. So that's just to sort of give us an idea of where we are and where we're going. So in summary, we submit to you that this request is both reasonable and in the public interest because it customizes and narrows in the universe and world of possibilities of what can already happen on this site. So as you look at what could the property owner or a developer go do tomorrow without ever coming before you versus what can we control and further dictate about this, this proposal customizes that and narrows it down. It provides, by doing so, it provides a much-needed transition, a step down between your high-intensity commercial and industrial corridors, stepping down into that single-family neighborhood to create a buffering and a transitional use so that you're not creating incompatible conflict of land uses like your comprehensive plan warned that we should be looking out for. And it is consistent with your land development plan, as we've been over, both in the big objectives of following that activity center node type of planning to provide for walkability, to make sure that we are following the future land use plan designation and the GMA3 growth area mandates. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. We have Aiden here, we have John and Laurie, and I'll just reiterate that we're here for further response and clarification based on anything we hear as your discussion moves forward.
Anyone have any further questions?
Thank you. I think you've done a wonderful job of presenting the project and breaking it down so the citizens know it's a potential 240 units here, or we can control it, not have apartments. We can have townhomes, single-family living at 184, no more than 200. That's our choices.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from Lomonaco who would like to speak? Anyone else who would like to speak for?
Mayor, I just had a couple questions for the developer.
Okay.
If I could. Where you at? Because I'm not familiar with you. Okay. I just had a couple of questions on the construction with the townhomes. What's it going to be built made of? Are we talking brick or what? I know this is some of the things that was addressed to me. And the single-family detached type of homes, what are we looking at there in the construction of it? Because we have Cotswold Terrace, which is some older townhomes there that are brick. So I was just trying to get an idea of what y'all's aspect is on the construction of it.
Price range may even help answer some of these questions or concerns.
I'll defer to your city attorney, but of course, those types of questions are not allowed under the North Carolina statute for zoning decisions. However, I will say, and John and Laurie may want to expand on this, but they are residential developers in the Triad. This is what they do. They're local. They live in the area, so their reputation at stake, and they want to be proud of their communities. So they actually do this a lot, where they come into these infill or adjoining situations, and they drive around that neighborhood, look at what's there, look at the level, and what the reasonable expectation would be of you as the leadership and planning staff and the people who live there, and they try to be in keeping with that. So they curate to ensure that they're not putting something that looks like sticks out like a sore thumb, or that is going to severely impact things that people care about in terms of real estate planning. Trying to keep it all between the lines here, Mr. Attorney. So they do take a careful attention to that, and that is why they make sure to always do HOA type of communities, so that the rules are only as good as they're enforced and maintained. So there will be an HOA with architectural standards to ensure that the building material is what it's supposed to be. The roof gabling is followed. The rules against fences or parking in the front yard, all of these things that we would not expect to see in a neighborhood like this. We want to keep those expectations in line with what you all and our neighbors would expect. So that's one of the reasons we do HOA, and that we make sure to put a framework in place that no matter who buys a lot or who buys and builds there, it will be up to the correct standard. So if they want to go into any more detail about how they curate that, we will, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't get a foul of 160D. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for? Anyone who'd like to speak against?
I'll start, so nobody else wants to. My name is Gary Hunick. I just moved here. We moved from Atlanta about 3 months ago, and my wife actually works in the medical field here. We moved to this neighborhood because it's a cute little neighborhood, nice little subdivision. All the homes are about a half an acre. I think there's probably 30 or 40 homes in the whole neighborhood. I'm looking at this picture right here, and maybe you guys can look at it. And if you look at that, the half-acre homes, all of a sudden we have I think there's 8 or 9 homes there, abutted to 40 transitional homes. Well, that's really nice. Now we have the neighbors that have been here for 30 years that are backed up to 6 or 7 homes. And they have a 20-foot buffer. Wow, 20 feet is from me to the wall. I mean, come on. That's going to be scrub brush, and we're going to be backed up to homes with 40 homes. Just look at the corner lot here, the very corner one up in the top right-hand corner. There's probably 15 homes backed up to that. I don't know how many people are going to be buying these. You're playing of, we can't go into the price of this. Okay, great. We're paying $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 for these homes. Now we're going to be abutted with $150,000 homes, $200,000 homes, rental properties with the transition. I don't know. Like to like. There's no like to like here. These homes that we are in our neighborhood are nothing in comparison to what you're planning on putting in. There's nothing. I mean, you're going from, I was looking at this little bit. Our 6 homes are 7 to 20 per acre, according to the standards. Our 12 are 3 to 7 per acre. That's what I read off the documents from you guys. You're talking 200 homes on 70% of the land mass, and to me that's 20 per acre. We have 4 per acre maybe in our neighborhood, and they're going to 10 per acre, I think is what the number was. There's also a little quotation about stabilize and protect the essential characteristics of the area and prohibit commercial development. I don't think this is stabilizing and protecting the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. I don't know if anybody of you guys, where you all live, but if you're living in the neighborhood and all of a sudden you have mass townhomes going up, and I understand, Mr. Martin, you said something that, we have A or B. Well, the other C that we forget about is that the neighborhood can also come back and slow all this production down too. I mean, legally we can go and hire our attorneys and slow production. So I mean, we're saying, well, it could be worse. It could be 240 homes, so we're only going to do 180 homes. I mean, come on. I'm pretty upset about this. Again, moving here and looking at the area, looking at this town, looking at Reidsville, which has blighted areas all over the place. We have water pressure where I had to get a plumber out to make another connection because we don't have pressure to even water the lawn. But now we're going to put another 200 homes there. Okay, that's going to be an interesting story. Oops, sorry.
Please give your name and address, please.
N. Smith, 2506 Ashcroft Drive. And I just want to know, there's been 2 options. I want to make clear, is there only two options? In other words, if we don't do this, they can do something else that we will find worse. Is this absolutely the truth? Now, I'm not absolutely sure. And I'm telling you the truth, I've developed properties before myself, and I've been in your seats. But when they said that, are we absolutely sure there are any other options? Has anybody really explored that? And maybe they have. I don't know. And I look at this too, they were saying something about each lot was going to be 5,000 square feet. Am I correct about that? Am I wrong?
6,000, I think.
6,000 square feet. I've got a place at the beach, and I'd about reach out and touch somebody on my home at 6,000 square feet. Has anybody here got a house on 6,000 square feet? It's a very, very tiny lot. It's almost like you're in a townhouse or an apartment complex because they're so close to you.
That's what they're
Now,
building,
there might not be.
townhouses. They're building townhouses.
Building townhouses,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe I'm just, I don't know. But if there's any other options, has anybody studied, is there any other options? If there's not, I know other people that I've talked to that have been stuck in the same situation that we are. They can't do anything about it because of laws and that sort of things and the different codes and regulations. But I would just like to know, have any of you thought of another option? Or is there another option that you know of? Or is this just basically it? And they have, and we appreciate that. We appreciate they have reduced the number of homes from the maximum that they can have. But
Let me say something. So we put a lot of time and effort, thought, and communication into this, which is the reason why the planner prepared this documentation. The attorney, as well as Drew, as well as Jason, got up there and explained what the zoning regulations are. I asked specific questions about who implemented these zoning regulations. Is it state? Is it the city? Not because I needed to know. I already knew the answer. I asked those questions so you guys could know the answer. I asked, how are these zoning ordinances created? When are they created? And when were they created? None of which this council has, at least I didn't create. So when we come up here and we vote on this zoning, we vote on what is in our zoning ordinance, which is our city ordinances, which is our law. We don't get the opportunity to change those mid-stride. If you guys don't like those, then maybe we should get engaged with the city, with planning staff, and request those. Maybe you should look at what the zoning ordinance, let me finish. Look at what the zoning ordinances are that are surrounding where you live, so then you know what potentially could be built beside of you, okay? And what was also said, there was a comment made about you guys getting together and hiring your attorneys and doing all these things. The bottom line is R12 as it stands, you could get 240 apartments and they don't have to come here and ask us a thing. They submit their construction documents, bypass this whole process, okay? I've talked to dozens and dozens of people, phone calls after phone calls.
And you've taken it out.
So this is the way I see it. You get 240 apartments. If these guys back out of this deal, another developer comes in and you get Longdale Drive. Or you can regulate this with some townhomes where there is home ownership, where there is an HOA, where there is an HOA. And then that's the way that it goes. There is two options. Option A, option B. There is no option C because these are our laws that are put in place. If we don't like them, we look at changing them. But for us as council right now, we have to make the decision of what is in the books at this moment. I can't look at this, they petition this, and then I say, I don't like that, so we're going to change those laws right now. It doesn't work that way.
Well, see, if you were listening to me, like we have a ton of information back here, and I'm listening to all this stuff. And for me to sit there and comprehend it, even after we've studied for a while, to comprehend all that's been said, we're not absolutely sure. I'm not. I'm a pretty smart guy. I know. Let me ask you. And all I was asking was this. Is there any other options? Now, I could be making your case for you. I said there's only two options here. that I would be satisfied with, the rest of maybe a lot of these people would be satisfied with, and the other option, which it's the very minimum they can do some other option and have 240 votes. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And if there's not, there's not.
So Jason went over what is allowed in R12 as it is, and what type of building is there. You know, someone made a reference of the 23 acres up to 761 or 240 apartments. I can't remember if that's single-family homes allowed up to the 1 acre or whatever that may be. So when you look at everything, and I know it's a lot to digest, Drew's offered to pass these out. She's offered to go over these things. We have talked about these things.
Yeah.
And you can get the conditional request that they're making, if it's council's appetite to pass that, which then in terms keeps you from having apartments, limits the number of units, because you could have 240 apartment units there, or they can establish what parameters they have set on their own development with HOAs and to try to keep the neighborhood nice. No developer and no investor is going to build a neighborhood that's going to be $150,000 townhomes in this neighborhood because they want to maximize their profit. So I'm sure they want higher margins in their townhomes to control them.
More than we're hoping so.
I feel everybody's pain. I had a conversation with the city manager, the planners and them last week to try to make sure we've done the best to explain what R12 is, what options are at R12, and then worst case scenario, R12 is 240 apartments, period. And everybody understands that no one has to come in here and ask us anything to build 240 apartments. And I wouldn't be afraid to say that Lawndale Drive would mind building an additional 240 apartments in Reidsville because there's an appetite for it. So I would be glad that these developers do want to condition the neighborhood, whether it's what our particular preferences are. We all have the opportunity, whether you like it or not, to buy the property. It was for sale, and then we can control what's in there. I'm sorry that you moved.
I have been in the same situation.
I'm sorry that you moved in the neighborhood, but we as council can go by what's on the books. If the citizens don't like it, petition us, ask us to change it, and then the next time I can cast my vote based off of what the code and what the ordinance is. We don't get to change it.
Sir, I've been in this situation, same situation as I tried to explain, and all I asked, was there a different approach to this? Now, the only other thing I would say that I have some objection or some concern about the road coming out, because already there's some problems with traffic right there. And I agree with someone else who has mentioned the possibility of maybe another exit out on Freeway Drive, if it's possible. It would be great. I understand you don't do it, but I'm saying this to the developers or whoever might have control of this, if they could possibly look and see if that ever comes that possibility, please do that. Because I can see there's like 1,000 people a day or something going to be coming down that street and coming to that stoplight, and it's going to create some real traffic problems. But anyway, I'm finished, sir. I understand your position. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyone else who'd like to speak against? Would you like to clarify anything before we close?
I could have given a little more information even within the rules about price. It's a function of math in terms of the cost of the land and the cost of development. So as a housing advocate and as a proponent of everyone being able to have housing, I wish that it was possible to build $150,000 homes. They wouldn't be appropriate here, but they're appropriate some places, and it's not possible. You are not going to get those types of values here. You're going to get a value that's commensurate with the land price and the cost of construction to build things like sidewalks and storm drainage and common areas. So you're going to have a commensurate pricing experience with what you're already seeing in the area because of those factors and indicators. As for the road going out onto Freeway, yes, that's entirely up to DOT. If they wanted to open that and have it there, they would. That's not on the subject property, so that's in the vein of whoever controls that paper right-of-way. However, That won't happen because you can already see here it conflicts with the ramp going up onto 158. So that would be a very dangerous conflict there to put cars out onto the 29 freeway right there at that ramp movement of the 158 interchange. So, but yes, that's exactly the kind of stuff that will go into that analysis with NCDOT. Also, in terms of the quality of the buffer, we actually didn't just specify the width, we specified its contents. So it'll either be a fence or evergreen plantings or the existing vegetation. And so we provided each of those three options to ensure that it's not just scrub growth, so that it would actually be an opaque privacy screen, so that that 20 feet will at least be substantive for that distance to create a separation and a sense of screening that otherwise would not be there. Thank you.
What about the water pressure?
I'll have to let your city speak to that.
We'll close the public hearing at 7:20. What's the council's favor?
Well, I would like to say that I think that we are all much more informed than we were before we got here tonight.
Yeah.
We have a lot more information, and I think that we understand exactly how both sides feel, but like Councilman Martin said, that we're not in control of changing the laws right in the middle of it. And if we did that, then there would be an uproar, and we would have things that we'd have to really seriously consider that we were doing wrong. So, anybody else have a comment?
I'm ready to make a motion to approve the recommended rezoning for the specified parcel to the requested zoning district based upon the consistency of reasonableness and determination statements that are included in the council's agenda packet submitted during the rezoning presentation as may be amended, incorporated into the motion to be included in the minutes.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'm going to have to second it because I think that we're not doing our job if we vote any other way. Because the city council before us set the parameters that we have to work with the zoning, and I think that I'm obligated to vote to agree to second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'll just say I apologize to you guys who don't like this, but we're faced with the decision of leaving this open. You can get potential 240 apartments, or you can get what's here. So I have to make the best decision of what I think is in the best interest of the neighborhood. We all have different opinions and different approaches, but as my opinion is if I was living in this neighborhood, I would rather see this development than to see this move on and same people or someone else build 240 apartments in there that are not owned by individual homeowners, as these will be. So, thank you.
All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed? All right, thank you.
An hour and 23 minutes, and on something we ain't got no control over. Don't like it, buy the property, it's just like the casino.
Item 1.
13 more to go. Yes.
We wouldn't be doing our job if we did that. know there's someone that just put up some property on 158 Business Road. The neighbors were upset because how close it is to their house. But it was an empty lot for so long, if they didn't want that, maybe they could have, that's what I told them.
We looking all quiet down there.
All right, the next item on the agenda is consideration of a conditional rezoning request for two properties located as follows. 1, West Side Drive, Rockingham County Parcel 183987, and 2, Linville Drive, Rockingham County Parcel 183988, to assign a City of Reidsville zoning designation of Conditional Zoning Residential 6, CZR6. The applicant is True Homes. The owners of the property located on Woodside Drive are Larry Summers and Mary Lynn Summers. The owners of the property located on Linville Drive are James Bowen and John E. Bowen Jr. Docket number CZ 2025-04, Enclosure 2, Jason Hardin.
Mayor and Council. True Homes is petitioning with written consent of the current owners to rezone two parcels located off of Woodside Drive, Rockingham County Tax Parcel Number 183988, and Linville Drive, Rockingham County Tax Parcel Number 183987 to Conditional Zoning Residential 6 or R6. Two separate lots involved in this one rezoning case, or one conditional zoning under one project. So we just combine them for the sake of, they're going under one zoning designation as a part one project. So that's why those two are together. The owners of the property located of the Linville Drive property are James Bowen and Johnny Bowen Jr. The owners of the property located off of Woodside Drive are Larry G. Summers and Mary Lynn Summers. Each parcel encompasses an area of 9.23 acres for a total combined acreage of 18.46 acres. The Woodside Drive parcel is currently zoned residential 20 or R20 and is undeveloped. The Linville Drive parcel is currently zoned residential 12, R12, and is also undeveloped. There is city water service available that's existing and available. A zoning assessment of the surrounding area. To the north you have R12. To the west you have also R12. To the east you have a mixture of R20 and R12 with some split zone lots to the east, and then to the south you have R20. So R20 is our low density residential zoning district. So that's where you have 20,000 square foot single family lots. As we know from our previous case, R12 12,000 square foot lot. So it's a medium density district with multifamily, whereas R20 prohibits multifamily because it's a low density district and not a medium density district. As I said, water and sewer service are available to the east within the right of way of Linville Drive, to the south within the right of way of Woodside Drive, and to the west within the right-of-way of Sherwood Drive. There's no streams on site. However, the property is located in the Jordan Lake watershed. The property is not located in the Troublesome Creek watershed, so we're not dealing with that watershed. We're just dealing with Jordan Lake, although thankfully there's no streams on site, so no buffers, no special consideration. This is just your standard general lots with no special considerations as far as those go. The floodplain insurance rate map or firm does not indicate any floodplains on site. As I went over in my last presentation, a conditional zoning request amends the zoning map with site-specific conditions that are incorporated into the zoning map amendment, which allows the owners and the developers to place voluntary conditions on the land with the intent of restricting allowable uses within the new zoning district, or they can ask for deviations from certain standards. The owners and applicants get to choose, of course, which those allowable uses they want to place on the property. The owners and applicants have requested to limit the allowable land uses to single-family detached dwellings only. So that's the only use that's requested in the development application for the conditional rezoning. with the intent. Additionally, they have agreed to provide all necessary infrastructure, and an HOA will be provided. The applicant will provide a 20-foot wide natural landscaping buffer around the property boundary. You can see this if we pull up the, Steve, can we get the Woodside Drive plan up? This is the concept plan for what, this is still Ashcroft.
Single family detached.
This is your concept plan for Woodside Drive and Limple Drive. So it's all single family detached. The applicant is requesting to provide a 20-foot vegetative buffer. They'll be either natural or fenced and landscaped around the perimeter of the property. This time it goes all the way around. All the way from the side that faces Limble Drive, all the way around to the side that's west. This is kind of flipped, so when you're looking at it on the screen, what you would think is north is west, because that's Sherwood Drive, so that's to the west. So it's kind of sideways. To the south is east, so that's your bearing there. So the buffer would go around the entire perimeter to try to ease that transition, because this area, as I mentioned in my zoning assessment, is kind of a hodgepodge. You've got multifamily development to the west and to the north, and then to the south you have lower density single family. So this is kind of another one of those transitional areas, kind of sort of similar to what we saw in the last one. From more medium density multifamily development, or apartments as we call them, to lower density single family. So this is another transitional area. But in this instance, they're requesting only to do single family detached, no single family attached, or two family homes. So that's the only use that's requested. There are some deviations that they are asking for in the conditional zoning. They are requesting to have 4,000 square foot lots. That there is no cluster development here. So by right, it would be 12,000 square foot lots in R12 and 20,000 square foot lots in R20. They're asking for a lot size of 4,000 square feet. So there's no watershed here, so they couldn't do a cluster development by right today. So this one's a little bit different from our previous case. Within a standard R6 district, the allowable minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. So if you went to your standard R6, it would be 6,000 square feet. As I mentioned, that they're asking for that 4,000 square foot minimum lot size to cluster these homes and leave an ample amount of open space around the perimeter of the property. This is a reduction, as I said, of 2,000 square feet. Within a standard R6 district, the allowable minimum side yard setback is 8 feet. They're asking for a 5-foot side yard. So this is very much your planned unit development, or PUD as you hear them called in other cities. We don't really have a PUD district here, but this is very much what I would consider as a planner, a planned unit development. Very small lots, very clustered, kind of buffered a little bit from your surrounding area. That's the closest thing that I could liken this to. So you're kind of creating a zoning district of its own, more akin to an R4, I would say, if you wanted to quantify it like our other zoning districts are. The applicant is requesting an allowable minimum side yard setback, as I said, of 5 feet, which is a reduction of 3 feet from the district standard for R6. The applicant has provided the concept master plan that's required by the zoning ordinance, as you can see on the screens and your agenda packets, depicting the aforementioned development conditions. The proposed concept master plan limits construction to 79 dwelling units, so no greater density than 79. Per Article 5, Section 1 of the zoning ordinance, any major changes, I said this is the same thing we went through. Anytime you have a major change where they're changing uses, like they're changing use from single-family detached, they have to come back before planning board, city council. They couldn't just change uses without amending the conditional zoning. So just the same thing that I went through with the last case, as well as, of course, this does not issue any type of construction plan approval. It's just setting the stage. I like how the attorney from the previous case said that. It's setting the stage for development. It's not approving that development. So the proposed conditional zoning aligns with goal number 3 of the Reidsville Land Development Plan to expand housing. This includes expanding the housing stock and providing a variety of housing options that are attractive and affordable to people of all income levels. The property is located in Growth Management Area 3, Suburban, which surrounds the city center. This is the same growth management area you saw in the previous case. It's our suburban area, lots of residential development. It's transitioning from that high density in downtown to your outskirts, which is more of your low density where you're getting into the county, if that makes sense. Growth Management Area 3 is predominantly characterized, as I've said, as a mix of residential and commercial development with ample vacant land for expansion and development. According to the Land Development Plan, GMA3 prioritizes the expansion of residential development and provides an existing transportation network capable of accommodating growth. Additionally, GMA3 residential development is in close proximity, as we said, to our commercial establishments, offices, and industrial employers and so forth. Therefore, staff finds the proposed conditional rezoning to be consistent with the Reidsville Land Development Plan, reasonable in the public interest. The planning staff recommend approval of the proposed conditional rezoning, and the planning board unanimously recommended that the proposed conditional rezoning be approved. I'll be glad to answer any of your questions as always.
Any questions of Jason?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We have been asked so many times for smaller homes with small front yards, especially for senior citizens. It seems to me this would probably be what people are looking for.
Could be, yeah. It's definitely smaller lots. You would have limited, land maintenance to take care of, so that's definitely a consideration.
But it would still be up to the builder whether it was 1 level, 2 level.
Correct.
Right.
As we know, state law prohibits cities from instituting any kind of design standards for any structure that's built under the residential code. So anything that's built under the residential building code, we couldn't come in and say, you've got to build, a masonry exterior, you've got to build it just like the way that we want it. That's prohibited under law. So, we wouldn't have any say in the architectural design, but definitely it would, likely with these smaller lots, you would see them be affordable.
Thank you.
I would think.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for? Name and address.
Joey.
Hold just a second. Public hearing starts at 7:37.
My name's Joe Eaton. I live at 8065 Windswept Drive, Blues Creek, North Carolina, representing True Homes here. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about ourselves. Unlike the previous zoning hearing that you had, we're not only entitling the property, we would also be the builder there at this property. So we would develop the site and then also build the homes there as well. We're a North Carolina and South Carolina builder. We're not a national builder. We've been working in the triad since I believe about 2012. We do about 400 homes a year in the triad. And the closest we've been to here is to the Reedy Fork neighborhood. We've been in there for a while. The way we differentiate ourselves, we're mainly pre-sale. We don't build speculative homes or pre-made homes that are predetermined and then we sell what we got. We pre-sell them and the customer gets to choose their lot, they get to choose their floor plan, they get to choose, come into our showroom, they get to, what lighting package they want, what lights they want, what for an elevation they want. Do they want brick, do they want rock, do they want, they've got a lot of different choices that they can choose depending on their budget. And some of them have quite a bit to spend and some of them have less, so it allows them to customize it to their needs and it gives them the ability to personalize it. And we see that folks tend to take better care of the homes when they are able to personalize it like that. We do build a high quality home. We use great brands like Carrier for our HVAC equipment, Moen for our plumbing fixtures, granite countertops are standard in our homes, GAF, architectural shingles is what we spec out, Whirlpool appliances, Mohawk flooring. We go as far as even sod the whole lot, the front and the back. Most builders you'll see, they'll just catch the front. We sod the whole yard, front to back with Bermuda. It's a lower maintenance grass for the homeowner, so that, so that they're able to deal with that and not have to spend too much time. What we find with a community like this is we've had really good success, especially in the Winston market with similar layouts. People are really active. They don't, they're getting a lot of house, not a lot of lot. They don't have a lot to maintain, and that just seems to resonate with the folks. And our sales show it in those neighborhoods. And it's just a difference of, what people are looking for now as to what they were looking for in the past. So when you look at this, you talk about 4,000 square foot lots. You'll also notice that we don't take our property lines all the way to the end, all the way to the lot lines. And the difference between us just being a builder and a developer, we know as a builder that when you allow that to go to the property line, you've got drainage swells in the back. People build fences to keep their dog, and they take them all the way, and they jam up those waste where the stormwater can go. And so that keeps that in check, and it allows you don't have those issues that cause problems within the neighborhood. So that's part of the reason why we kept the lots smaller as well. Neighborhood features. So these are 30 by 60 building pads. We'll offer 2 and 1 car garage options there. We'll have multiple master down options. You mentioned that earlier. And then, the square foot range will range between 1,500 and 2,300 square feet there, which is in line with the higher side of the adjoining single family. While the lots are smaller, the houses are as big, if not bigger, than most everything that's adjoining this property. The development, what we would expect with success here would be we would begin development in Q1 of next year. Development taking about a year, and then home construction the following year. We would pace this out. We don't come in and just try to build them all at one time. We would expect a pace of around maybe 3 to 4 a month, something like that, something manageable, something that doesn't create chaos, up and down the streets. And construction wrapping up in Q4 of 2028. So with that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for? Is there anyone who'd like to speak against? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing at 7:42. All right. What is council's favor?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the proposed rezoning be approved for the specified parcel to requested zoning district based upon the consistency and reasonableness determination statements that are included in the council agenda packet submitted during the rezoning presentation and as may be amended, incorporated into the motion to be included in the minutes.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Have you been to any of his properties already, Phil?
They're a little tight.
Yeah, but if that's what people want.
I think it's gonna be good for our seniors. They're trying to downsize, but we got it.
And that
We're going to take about a 10-minute break.
have been seniors.
Call the meeting back to order. Next on the agenda, consideration of a zoning ordinance text amendment request to amend Article 5, Section 3, special uses of the Reidsville zoning ordinance to amend the special use permit requirement for shopping centers. This text amendment will repeal language prohibiting drive-in restaurants, remove game rooms and indoor theaters, as a permitted use and introduce indoor amusements as a permitted use within shopping centers. T 2025-02, Enclosure 3, Jason Hardin.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Staff is petitioning to amend Article 5, Section 3, Special Uses of the Reidsville Zoning Ordinance to amend the special use permit requirements for shopping centers. The amendment will repeal language that prohibits drive-in restaurants while introducing indoor amusements as a permitted use in the special use permit requirements for shopping centers. We have several of these around the city. Most of them were permitted. Well, Penrose Mall was permitted back in the 60s as a shopping center. We have some newer ones that were done around the early 2000s, like the Lowe's shopping center. These special use permits were issued at the time of construction or preemptively to control what developed on those lots. So what we've done here is brought a text amendment to change some of those standards. Game rooms and indoor theaters will be removed from the list of permitted uses in shopping centers since they are included in the definition of indoor amusements. So like if it was an arcade, if it was a kid's arcade, that's an amusement. So it's not prohibiting that. It's just clarifying that it's an amusement. Currently, the ordinance states that eating and drinking establishments are permitted with the exception of drive-in restaurant facilities. What that means is the way our ordinance is worded, it uses drive-in instead of drive-through. That was just the language. It's a little archaic language that was used in zoning codes of yesteryear. Instead of drive-through, it just says drive-in, but that's what it means. So that's just adding them to be able to be built in those shopping centers. So by removing this language, all restaurants will be allowed in the shopping center developments. The change will help expand dining options throughout the city. The planning staff have researched numerous other cities in the Piedmont Triad area, and we found that no other municipality requires a special use permit for shopping center developments. Furthermore, drive-in restaurants are generally allowed in all commercial zoning districts with the exception of downtown or central business districts and neighborhood business districts. By allowing drive-in restaurants and shopping centers, we're further aligning our development standards with those of other regional entities and municipalities such as Burlington, Greensboro, Mebane, and Eden that will encourage growth throughout Reidsville Reidsville's established commercial areas. This text amendment request is consistent with the Reidsville Land Development Plan under goal number 2, the strong local economy. There is a considerable need for commercial development, including restaurants, retail, and attractions in Reidsville. This amendment aligns with goal number 2 by removing regulatory barriers for commercial development and assists in addressing the need for a more diverse economy. By allowing drive-in restaurants or drive-throughs in all shopping centers where special use permits are required, we are able to enhance dining options throughout the city while making developments in our established commercial districts more attractive to both developers and residents. Planning staff recommended that the proposed text amendment be approved, and the planning board unanimously voted that the proposed text amendment be approved as well. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Any questions of Jason?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
It says game rooms and indoor theaters will be removed from the list of permitted uses in shopping centers since they are included in the definition of indoor amusements.
Yeah.
So indoor amusements can be included in shopping centers.
That's correct. That's what this text amendment is doing. So several months ago, you all approved a text amendment creating indoor and outdoor amusements to kind of consolidate some things. So an indoor amusement would be an arcade. That could be a type of amusement. We have a definition in the ordinance that defines exactly what amusements are. So this is just kind of being redundant. If we're allowing amusements, we are allowing arcades. So that's just kind of for eliminating redundancy. So,
I just have another quick question because it came up. If included in the amusements, did we include like billiard rooms or escape rooms?
Escape room, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Escape room could be an amusement. Pool hall, I can't remember, there is still a pool hall used in the ordinance. I have to look back at the definition to see if pool halls and pool establishments were included in that. But I think that our ordinance defines a pool hall as an establishment where 60% of the square footage is used for pool tables. So if it's less than that, it doesn't even meet that, so it would be an indoor amusement at that point. So I would say that, yeah, you could have billiard-type facilities under an amusement.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This will allow us to expand something like the shopping center that's out there. They'll be able to turn it into all kinds of restaurants and amusement there.
Well, it's just allowing indoor amusements, any use that's included under the amusements indoor use would be allowed, as well as allowing drive-in restaurants or drive-throughs. Right now in shopping centers on lots that were permitted as shopping centers at the time of development, they're prohibited right now. So you couldn't do a drive-through like a McDonald's or fast food, any type of restaurant that has a drive-through window. So this is removing that barrier and allowing those type of establishments on lots that are permitted as shopping centers.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jason. Open the public hearing at 7:57. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for? Is there anyone who'd like to speak against? We'll close the public hearing at 7:58. What's the pleasure of council?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the proposed text amendments to be approved.
Is there a second? Okay, we got a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Next item, consideration of a proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 for the ABC Board. Enclosure 4, W. Clark Turner, ABC Board Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think you've all been sent a copy of our budget for the next year.
Yes.
Our projected liquor sales for next year are $3,540,000. However, this figure could be impacted by the economic conditions of our citizens and also due to tariffs, which could impact scotch, gin, and tequila. So we don't know how that's going to figure into it, but hopefully it won't hurt us that bad. Taxes related to that are $814,000. Cost of sales, $1,840,000. Operating expenses, $667,150. Profit distributions, $92,100. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the public hearing will start at 8 o'clock. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for? Anyone who'd like to speak against? Close the public hearing at 8:01. And there's not a vote here. Next item, consideration of a proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 for the City of Reidsville, Enclosure 5, some or more. City Manager.
Mayor and Council. So you first got to view the budget for proposed fiscal year 25-26 at your May agenda meeting, and then we also had a budget work session at your May 19th meeting. So the objective of the proposed budget is to ensure the needs of all citizens are met in a cost-effective manner. The proposed citywide budget for fiscal year 25-26 is $41,200,000. $201,600 versus current fiscal year 2024-25 amount of $39,781,750. This is an increase of 3.57%, which is related to increased personnel cost, employee health insurance, and departmental operations. I know at our May 19th meeting, we discussed the budget at length, so I'll yield my time to Mayor and Council if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of city manager?
No.
Okay. Public hearing will start at 8:02. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? We'll close the public hearing at 8:03.
Make it up for lost time.
I will say that I would like to thank the team for their hard work on the budget for 2025-2026. There's no vote on this either. Moving on to next item, consideration of the adoption of the budget ordinance for fiscal year 2025-2026 and the resolution of understanding accompanying the budget adoption, Enclosure 6. Some or more.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is your opportunity to either vote for or against the proposed budget.
We don't have a prepared,
So if I can prepare you one very quick if you would prefer. So the first step would be the proposed adoption for approval, if the desire of council is a proposed adoption of approval for budget ordinance for fiscal year 25-26 and the resolution of understanding and accompanying budget adoption. That would be the motion to approve. There's a motion to deny, it'd just be the opposite.
Can we go on that? Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed budget.
I second.
Resolution of understanding.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, consideration of cleanup budget ordinance amendment for fiscal year 2024-2025, Enclosure 7. Chris Phillips, Assistant City Manager of Administration / Finance Director.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I would just like to thank you for did. That went pretty quick tonight. Watching on television or online that didn't watch last month, it was a pretty detailed presentation, and you all did some heavy lifting of your own by reviewing the budget in detail and having budget work sessions. So, we've been working on this for several months, and we appreciate your input and your support. I think the budget is very responsible and will give us the resources to operate for the next fiscal year. So thank you for that. That's the beginning of the next fiscal year. Now we're going to talk about the wrap up of the current fiscal year. So what I've got here to present to you tonight is Budget Ordinance Amendment number 16, and it's the cleanup amendment. So this is our last council meeting before the end of the fiscal year, and so we always do sort of a little cleanup. Instead of coming to you all for every nickel and dime that comes in during the year, we usually wrap it all into one presentation. Smaller things, but they add up, and they mean a lot to the departments that bring in these dollars. Sometimes it's a grant or a donation that they didn't know about when we did the budget, so they count on spending those dollars when they do receive them. Some of the larger ones on here, you got the PEG channel, that's money from the state to help with educational television. We weren't sure we were going to get that when the budget was adopted this time last year. There's always money that comes in from work that our police officers do on the federal and state level. We never know how much that's going to be. This year it ended up being $37,000 on the federal and $30,000 on the state through last month. So we want to recognize those dollars and give them a chance to spend it to continue combating crime in our city. Just different things. A lot of insurance proceeds. Unfortunately, we do have accidents from time to time, and we have proceeds from insurance that we need to replace vehicles. So those are in there. There's no use of fund balance with this budget amendment except for one area, the actual police separation fund. So we're going to be a little over what was budgeted this time last year by the end of this month. So we're going to use fund balance in the separation allowance fund for $12,000. That's the only, everything else is a new revenue and a corresponding expense. So in total, when you add all these smaller things up, it ends up being $376,428. So there is a suggested motion if you all want to approve budget amendment number 16 to recognize those cleanup items.
Any questions of Mr. Phillips? What's the pleasure of council for the cleanup?
I'd like to make a motion to approve budget ordinance amendment number 16 to record fiscal year-end budget cleanup items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, consideration for further discussion of a request to voluntarily annex 48.599 acres, Rockingham County Tax Parcel 155460 off Salem Church Road, Enclosure 8, Jason Hardin.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. So as you can recall, this item was continued from your previous meeting, consideration of the annexation of this property that's located off of Salem Church Road. It's a non-contiguous annexation. So it does have to meet certain statute requirements in order for a municipality to annex a parcel that is not what we call non-contiguous. And what does that mean? So that means that the lot is not immediately located right next to our current main corporate limit. So it's a little bit separated. So if the line was here, it's a little bit further. So the main requirements it has to follow is that it can't be any more than 3 miles from the primary corporate boundary. The city cannot annex more than 10% of the area that's within the primary corporate boundary. We're well short of the 10% maximum. So there's no concerns there as far as impact to our 10% acreage allotment. The last requirement would be that it can't be any closer to another municipality than it is to us. It's not closer to Wentworth, nor is it closer to Eden. So we are the closest municipality to this subject parcel. So again, the resolution that you're considering is just the initial step for annexation. This is just directing the city clerk to investigate the proposed non-contiguous annexation that's required under the North Carolina General Statute 160A. So this is just the first step. So you would come back the next month and have a public hearing along with consideration of the rezoning if you do approve the annexation. If you don't approve the annexation, obviously the rezoning would not happen because you can't zone property that's not within your corporate limit. So that's really all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions of Jason? What is the pleasure of council?
Mayor and council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution directing the city clerk to investigate the proposed annexation petition and schedule the required public hearing to be held at the July 8th, 2025 council meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Thank you guys for considering the City of Reidsville. I know I had some questions the last time. Those questions have been answered, and I appreciate it.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Next item on the agenda, consideration and further discussion in Indigo Creek Townhomes private water line repair. Enclosure 9, Josh Beck, Public Works Director.
Mayor, Council, if you don't mind, myself and Assistant City Manager and Finance Director Chris Phillips are going to tackle this one. I know that we have some of the HOA members and the president here tonight. So we were working on kind of a consensus. First of all, what we'd like Council to consider tonight is these two letters to be mailed out to the HOA and the adjoining property owner. And I'm just going to be very brief so I can read it into record so the HOA will know what to expect. This is the letter that we're asking Council to authorize city staff to send to the HOA and the adjoining property owner. The letter to Indigo Creek Homeowners Association. As you're aware, there's a significant leak in the water line that feeds the Indigo Creek Townhome community. Section 1046 of the City of Reidsville Code of Ordinances requires that service pipes be kept in good order to prevent waste of water under penalty of shutoff. The repair of this line is the responsibility of the customer. Because this water line issue has become a danger to city sewer service lines in the area, the city's agreed to work with the HOA to have the repairs completed. The city has secured city's plumbing and pools to make the necessary repairs at a not-to-exceed cost of $35,000. The Gonzalez family that owns the front parcel served by the water line has indicated that they may be willing to pay half the cost, resulting in a not-to-exceed cost of the HOA of $17,500. The city will allow the HOA to make payments over 3 years or 36 months toward the cost. If the full cost of $17,500 is realized, the payments will be $485 a month. If the HOA fails to make the payment, the water service to all the townhomes will be shut off until such a time payment is made. There will be no interest charged on the amount owed to the city. Please sign and date the letter below indicating that the HOA is agreeable to this arrangement. This letter must be returned by Wednesday, June 25th. A copy of this letter will also be sent to each townhome in the community. Thank you for attention to this letter, and please let us know if you have any questions. So that would be our first requirement, is for the Indigo Creek HOA to consider signing this letter, and then we would also send a very similar letter to the Gonzaga family, the property owner. Now, I know that our Public Works Director, Mr. Beck, has had preliminary discussions with that property owner. However, we don't have anything informally in writing from that property owner. But this would be our first attempt to at least make a direct contact and give both the HOA and Mr. Gonzaga an opportunity to respond to this letter. And with that, Mr. Phillips, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. You've done an excellent job. Not much more for me to say. We want to move this along because it's not going to get any better down there. And what makes this a little situation a little bit original, I think, is the fact that, as the letter said, it's starting to cause issues with our sewer line. So while this line is not a city line, it needs to be repaired. If it does not get repaired, we're going to have issues that will fall on the city. So we are willing to work with the HOA and the Gonzalez family to get this completed. The only thing we're asking you guys to approve is a budget amendment for the $35,000. So the city will pay the $35,000 and get reimbursed from these two other entities. The HOA, we're going to spread it over 3 years. The Gonzalez family, we intend to bill them the whole thing once we know the price. The $35,000 is a not to exceed. It could go really well and be less than that. So we don't know the exact price until the job's done. But it will not be more than $35,000.
Any questions?
Where do we stand if all don't sign or want to? The Indigo Creek.
So I'll defer back to our city attorney. That would be something, they would be in violation of the ordinance.
Talked about a promissory note. It's not a secured interest, but it would be a promise to pay that could be invested in court.
And honestly, with the townhomes, I mean, we do have the ability to cut off the townhomes. The other property owner doesn't currently use the water. There's nothing, they're out parcels that haven't been developed. So they, cutting them off is not going to do anything. But first of all, we're just going to get the agreement that they're going to pay half. And, you know, if we don't get an agreement from that other party, then we'll have to deal with, you know, a way to have recourse with them.
This $485 a month is divided by all the owners down there, right?
Well, it's the HOA's responsible.
The HOA's going to make a one-time payment of $485 a month for 36 months.
Yeah, the agreement will be with the HOA.
How many homeowners are there?
I think there's 14 townhomes.
I make a suggested motion for the approved attached budget and ordinance amendment with the proposal price of $35,000, authorized Public Works direct city plumbing and pools make necessary repairs to the private water line within the driveway of Indigo Creek Townhomes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you, and we will report back to you after
We can let them know to you.
Next item, consideration of extension of voluntary recycling agreement with Meridian Waste, formerly Foothills Waste Solutions, and accompanying resolution. Enclosure 10, Josh Beck.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager. This kind of actually goes back to 2019 when the city assigned an initial agreement with Foothills for a period of 10 years in 3-year increments. So in 2019, that was signed. In 2022, I brought to you guys the first extension of that, which was for an additional 3 years. And so that brings us to today in 2025. In January of this year, though, Foothills, if you guys are on the recycling, you might have noticed that you have a different looking bill. And so Meridian purchased Foothills at the beginning of this year. And so as this was coming up for renewal, we sent it to them for review and obviously for their signature on this as well. And in those discussions that we had with them, they asked initially for an escalation clause, a CPI clause, which is fairly custom. Most of Public Works' contracts, we actually have that. The mowing, our solids handling that we do through a various water plant and wastewater plant, we have CPI indexes in there for the contracts to slowly increase based on conditions of the environment through the year. Unfortunately, this contract does not have that clause, and so obviously staff did not have the ability to come in and add that, whether reasonable or not. So in conversations with the new owners, what we present to you tonight is a 3-month contract extension to ensure that we keep recycling moving forward and give staff the time to have further discussions with them and or possibly put it out for a new bid if we can't come to some agreement to move forward. So that's what we have presented. As you see, it will run, so it technically expires July 9th of this year, so roughly 30 days. And so this extension would get us through September, and again, give staff the time to look at an option, have conversations with them. They're actually here tonight. They're willing to meet with staff and have conversations about the possible extensions, what that might look like, or it can't come to some resolution, possibly put it out for renewal. It has been 6 years since it's put out. We've actually recently had some vendors interested in opportunity to serve City of Reidsville. So in your packet is both the resolution for that 3-month extension as well as the agreement to extend it, to just ensure that we keep recycling going in the community until the next step of this is determined. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Has participation increased any?
So I'm going to say it's pretty much been average. So initially, I will say that the Foothills contract requested a minimum of 400. I'm not going to stick to the exact number, but I know we're roughly just a little bit below that. I'm going to say 370, 380. And actually, that seems to be fairly consistent with the number I remember from 22. So we're just below the minimum that they would like us to be at, which is 400. And if you think about it, based on our utility bills and what we service, that's about 1 every 12 connections. So there is certainly an expense associated with driving through the whole city to try to pick up 380, 370 services, obviously.
Good thing about it with the increased housing, there's potential for that service to pick up.
Yes, sir. We actually had some conversations about the amount of housing proposed. Obviously, they've set through these tonight, so they see full and well that we have even more potentially coming online.
Pushing 1,800 to 2,000 proposed houses here.
That's correct.
36 months, it appears that we're going to continue to climb based off 785 and where we set amongst everything. So we definitely want to make sure we keep this service going.
And truthfully, we have a lot of infill. Public Works has done numerous taps. You know, I certainly wouldn't discount the small single-family homes that we're continuously seeing come in, and Public Works is adding those taps almost on a daily basis. So,
any other questions? It's the pleasure of council.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to award an extension of 3 months to Meridian Waste, formerly Foothill Waste Solutions, LLC. Allow staff to enter into discussions with Meridian about a possible multi-year extension.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Next item on the agenda, consideration of Lake Reidsville facility rental policy. Enclosure 11, Hayward Cloud Jr., Assistant City Manager of Community Services.
Fast, I think I need to slow this down again.
Fast as you want to.
Good evening. I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, citizens. We've had this conversation about a possible Lake Reidsville facility rental for about 5 months now. I think we discussed it at our budget retreat in February, and we've discussed it multiple times at our budget work sessions. And we have had multiple iterations of this. We created a committee and came up with all these, these things listed in the policy, as you can see. And we're just before you at this point to kind of finalize that whole deal and get a vote on it and answer any questions you may have about the process of creating this.
And Mayor and Council, if I may add one thing, you're certainly welcome to review this and we can bring it back for discussion in July. The one thing I know that we had some discussion from council on was the rental fee on page, it's actually in your agenda packet, on the first page. Number 2, rental fee. The rental fee for the Lake Reidsville Park is $3,000. This fee covers the following amenities for your event, and they're listed below. The one thing that came out of some of our discussions, which I thought was a very healthy discussion, was if you wanted a multi-day event. And there had been some consensus. The initial one day would be $3,000, and then an additional $1,500 for each day past that. Just something to consider. Again, no pressure. If you want to consider this for tonight, or if you're comfortable adopting it, we can make those changes, but just really wanted to get something before you. But I thought that was some good discussion that came out of some meetings about the multi-day.
We could
I apologize for that. I forgot about that. I apologize.
There was also some discussion about the tents too. The tent situation.
That's
that was
another whole policy that we're putting together, RV and tent camping policy that we're going to put together. That doesn't include
I
this.
say we allow staff to roll with this, see what the appetite is, and then can always come back and amend the fees later on and see how it works out as we figure this out throughout the summer.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Yeah. The multi-day thing is going to be big, I believe.
So you all are okay with the with the addition of that 1,500 additional day, if it's multiple days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good.
Question, point of order. On the fee schedule, can we change that to include the 1,500? I think currently the fee schedule that was just.
It's 3,000. I was,
We certainly can, if it's will of
Be
council.
included as part of the motion.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it just says 3,000.
so we'll ask
We'll
a
add-
motion for the amendment of 1,500 for each additional day.
There you go. Yeah.
I'll make that motion to approve the rental rates with the amendment of, if it's a rental of the all rental inclusive fee in here would then include 1,500 additional for the multi-day rental in the policy itself.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Cloud.
Next item, consideration of change to Section 10, standards for foundations, monuments, and markers of the Greenview Cemetery Rules and Regulations, Enclosure 12, Josh Beck, Public Works Director.
Mayor, before you tonight, it's a pretty self-explanatory one. So the cemetery rules and regulations was adopted in December of '96. Obviously, a few years have passed since then. And you guys may remember as early as last year, we actually opened a new section of the cemetery. Actually, our Public Services Superintendent Lindsay Tuttle at the time, that was one of the last things he completed before retirement, and that was actually Block 26. So since this, we've opened Blocks 23, 24, 25, and 26. And so what we're asking from you tonight is to basically amend the paragraph on the amendment there that basically adds 23, 25, and 26, those three blocks, to restriction of the flat markers. 24 does allow the raised markers, which is generally for families. We still have plots available in that. But obviously the flat markers allow easier maintenance, a lot less weed eating, as you can imagine. And so that's the policy that we've basically been running with, but we want to make sure that the regulations themselves clearly outline that as restricted to flat marker only. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Josh? Okay, what's the pleasure of council?
I make a motion to approve the accompanying amendment restrictions, Block 23, 25, 26, flat markers, Section 10 of Reidsville Cemetery Rules Regulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Next, we have public comments. Is there anyone who'd like to speak before council on tonight? Seeing no movement. Next on the agenda is board and commission appointments. Next is city manager's report, Enclosure 14.
and Council, I'll be brief tonight on my report. Just a couple updates. The ribbon cutting ceremony for the Rainbow Bridge at Lake Reidsville will be Monday, June 30th at 12 p.m. Also, the National League of Cities Annual City Summit will be Thursday, November 20th through Saturday, November 22nd in Salt Lake City. Couple other updates. We've got a Juneteenth celebration this Saturday, June 14th from 5 to 9 p.m. at Market Square. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. And then a couple personnel updates. Public Works Director Josh Beck has submitted his letter of resignation effective Friday, June the 13th. Mr. Beck will be pursuing another career opportunity with the City of Winston-Salem. The City of Reidsville wishes Mr. Beck continued success in all of his future endeavors. Former Fire Chief David Bracken will be serving as Interim Public Works Director, and former Street Superintendent Lindsay Tuttle will be serving as Interim Assistant Public Works Director, and Terry Hauk will be serving as Interim Project Manager. So Josh, thank you so much for your dedication and service to Team Reidsville. We will surely miss you, but we wish you all the best. A couple other updates. Planning and Community Development Director Jason Hardin has submitted his resignation letter effective Friday, June the 13th. Mr. Hardin will be pursuing another career opportunity with Guilford County. The City of Reidsville wishes Mr. Hardin continued success on all his future endeavors. Assistant City Manager Haywood Cloud will be serving as interim until a successor is named. We have started an internal posting that I believe closed either Friday or yesterday, so we will look at that moving forward. But Jason, thank you so much for your dedication and time to Team Reidsville. We appreciate you. Two other just quick announcements. It'll be on page 4 of my manager's report. I just have to make council aware of this each year. Under city manager updates, at the end of each fiscal year, the city manager must submit to city council a list of all surplus equipment. That is attached in your agenda packet for fiscal year 24-25. And I also have to make you aware of urban archery permits. There were 0 urban archery permits applied for and permitted in fiscal year 24-25. And Mayor and Council, that concludes my report.
Next, we have city council members' reports. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor, no report for me this month.
Councilwoman Dejanay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make mention of the She Means Business Expo that was held by the Reidsville Downtown City Council, Reidsville Chamber. Sorry, I'm a little tired. City Chamber, and I'd like to thank Diane Sawyer for the excellent job that she did. And I continue to get comments about, are we doing it next year or are we doing it twice a year? So congratulations to Diane Sawyer. And we had over 100 women in attendance.
Councilman Coates.
May 15th, attended a meeting with the downtown business owners with county administration and some of our city staff on a tax concern issue that she'd been dealing with. Then on 5/19, attended the budget meeting, and on 5/30, the Reidsville night with the Hoppers in Greensboro. And I also want to say I met with several campers out at Lake Reidsville when I did a ride-through, and spoke to some after we did the Phase 1. And everybody, it was all positive comments of the work that Public Works and our staff done. I just can't speak, just speak volumes of the work we did ourselves on it. I know we ran into that issue. We had to pull them away, and we had to contract it out so we can get it done. But they were very appreciative of the work and the condition of the campground there now. That's my report.
Councilman Martin.
I'll forego in light of closed session meeting and people waiting on us. Thank you.
Woman Scope.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a report because I've been out of town quite a bit lately, but one thing I wanted to say was when you go out of town to other cities, it gives you an opportunity to learn about the city, their government, their citizens, their policies, their appearance, but more than anything else, it gives you an appreciation for what we have. You know, when I was in San Francisco, and one thing I learned is I will never, ever, ever live there because the traffic is so bad. Nobody is polite about anything. The appearance of the city is just, I'm just so proud of Reidsville. And I just want to make everyone understand how I feel about that, because we have so much to be thankful for and so much to appreciate right here in Reidsville.
Councilman Hurst.
I attended the Beauty of Reidsville Gala. It was held at the Reidsville Event Center, and what a wonderful, spectacular event it was. And Ms. Lipscomb, just beautiful job. And I've had a lot of people say they are hoping that this will be an annual thing, great attendance. And so that is my report.
I'm going to forego my report also on tonight because of the closed session that we'll be going into. But I do want to say to Jason and to Josh, we are a team here in Reidsville. And if I were a football coach, I would say that we're losing two players that played both sides of the ball. And they worked very hard to make sure that Reidsville is one of the best places that you might want to live. To echo what you said about going to other cities and visiting, even going to a city like Greensboro where they've got most everything. When I get back here to Reidsville, I feel a whole lot better than being in Greensboro. So, gentlemen, I hope and pray that everything goes well for you in your new endeavors. And we're truly going to miss you here in Reidsville.
Good luck.
Announcement of board and commission appointments. Oh, yeah, I forgot about Diane. It's been a long night, Diane.
I know. Everybody's forgoing their reports, and I was like, I feel like I have to be.
And I look right at you, too.
Make it quick.
I'm working on it. I won't give you her time. Oh, goodness. There's a lot coming up, but May was a really busy month. And I do just want to say a few things to echo what Councilman Coates was saying. I don't think that he would mind me saying it. John Hall and I ran into each other. Talk about being in other cities. We were 2 hours from home, and his granddaughter was playing on the same field as my daughter. And he just bought an RV because his daughter's playing travel softball, and we were having a conversation about it, and he said, well, you'll never believe, camp for the first time at Lake Reidsville this past. I said, tell me about it. He said, Diane, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know what's happening, but it is amazing. He was like, we had the greatest experience. Everything was wonderful. They had one spot left, and I took it, and we ran down there. He said, we were unpacking dishes at Lake Reidsville because we literally have never camped before, ever. He was like, but that was where we wanted to camp first, and it was awesome. So I just think that it's amazing the things that are happening, and he was real excited about it. And John and Robin said, kudos to you all, and they hope that it keeps up. Other great things that happen, Barbara, thank you for sponsoring the She Means Business event. And I don't know, I know that a lot of the gentlemen wouldn't know this because they weren't there, but we did have over 100 women in attendance from all over Rockingham County, Guilford County, and people who'd never been to the Penthouse before, had never been to the Carriage House before. Just lots of really great stuff to say about the venue, a lot of exposure, and I cannot wait to do the next one. There were a lot of Team Reidsville people there speaking, so I really do hope that we get to do that again soon. Also, thank you for mentioning the Hoppers Night. We had a record-breaking 570 people go to Reidsville Night at the Hoppers this year, so very large presence. I love that everybody wears their shirts. We took up 2 sections. It was very exciting. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for your support and everything that we do together. I think it makes a huge difference. Upcoming events, we do have the concerts that the city does, and we will be there doing the beer gardens, and we're really excited about that. I appreciate the partnership on that. We do have a really cool countywide after hours coming up. It is on June 26th. Serve Pro is celebrating 15 years. You know, Jody and Cliff are kind of local celebrities, and They've been in an Alabama music video and won shagging contest, so I just want to go out and support them. It's going to be in Stoneville. We expect a large crowd. They're going to have a band and all kinds of fun stuff. So come out. The ice cream social's coming up. We're launching all of the registration for that this week. It is on July 17th. It will be at J.C. Park at the splash pad and the basketball and shelter and playground. Again, that's free. It is free to everybody. If you are a chamber member or a family member of, but you must RSVP so that we can have enough food. And we do encourage people to bring ice cream. Also, we have launched registration for our 32nd annual Golf for Reidsville. It's a Captain's Choice tournament, and it will be on August 13th. Upcoming ribbon cuttings, we have Power Sports of the Carolinas. Some of you may have been at that original for used Power Sports, but he took on a couple of new brands and had to rebrand himself and his name. So now not only is he used Power Sports, he has actually got new items and new brands and lines of vehicles. And then again, Summer mentioned the Rainbow Bridge. We also have our newest ribbon cutting. This is really important. I really hope to see like 100% attendance at this. We are having the countywide ribbon cutting for the Rockingham County School CTE Innovative High School. It will be at the Busherpick Learning Center on County Home Road, but it is July 31st at 9 a.m. So really excited about the new CTE High School and what it's going to provide. So no coffee in July. Ice cream social takes place for that, and that's all I have. Any
Thank
questions?
you, Diane. You do a fantastic job.
Have a great staff and board and ambassadors. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one thing. I want to thank the City of Reidsville for our veterans flags downtown. I've had so many comments about them, and people and families from all over are coming to Reidsville just to see their flags, and they're very proud of them, and thank you so much.
All right.
And now, the appointment.
Two boards of conditions were made considered tonight. Kevin Patchen for the Criminal Justice Commission and Keith Wells for the planning board. Voted for the as slated.
Thank you. We're going to be moving to the first floor conference room for a closed session to discuss an item under attorney-client privilege pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A3. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? We won't be coming back out. We do appreciate your presence on tonight. Thank you so much.